If you were to give but a cursory glance to the world around us, you would see very easily that we are kind of in the midst of an environmental crisis. Uh, you you could very easily see that approximately 15 billion trees are cut down on a yearly basis. And unfortunately, one of the many sources for that disturbing number is a process that exists in the winemaking industry. And because within the production of wine, a typical process that will occur is wine oak aging, where they expose wine essentially to oak to let it impart flavors into the actual wine. However, the problem of this is due to the extensive size of the wine industry, it can have a noticeable effect on the overall tree population, because every oak barrel, every set of oak chips is at a cost of a tree somewhere. The aim of my research is to essentially evaluate the use of vine chips, i.e. cuttings from a vine, as a possible alternative, because they are a very similar fibrous plant material that when toasted and exposed to the wine could ideally provide similar flavor compounds into the actual wine. And ideally that's what my research purpose is to do.
Am I on? There. Question. So a lot of times when wine is aging, it's in the barrels. And so you're stating that you would enhance the flavor through chips, wine chips. Where would that sit if it's not in a wooded barrel?
So the chips and barrel methods of aging are alternatives to that essentially are designed to essentially achieve the same thing, because a barrel, typically in like a classically aged wine, you'll store it in a barrel for like years and years and years. However, barrels are incredibly expensive. Like a small barrel can easily be around $230 easy. So a lot of the ways that smaller brewers and smaller companies will actually cut costs on that is that they will put oak chips into the wine and they'll let it sit at all. I mean, they're buoyant, so they'll sit on top to be specific, but they will sit in the wine and then they'll leach flavors into the wine. So that's essentially how that happens, like physically speaking. So it's really the chips are an alternative to the barrels generally. What I would do is I would take those clippings from a vine, chop them into manageable pieces that are comparable to chips, and then let them sit in the wine, similar to the oak chips, and allow them to ideally impart those same flavors.
Is there a method of seasoning these vine shoots, or to get that similar flavor profile? Is there something you've got to do, an extra step?
Yes, there is a step. It's kind of dependent on what you're going for with what your wine, because when someone is aging wine, everybody will have a different goal of what they're going for, and also entirely depends on what the varietal of wine is. So generally, to season it, to really define what you get, the way you kind of control what flavors show up and what don't, is you would have a different toast time, because there's degrees of toasting that you can toast the wine at. A light toast, or for maybe more of a vanilla flavor, whereas a light toast for maybe more smoky clove flavors. So there is some degree of seasoning that you can do, but it's generally there's not a whole lot of extra spices added in, because once you add that into a wine, it kind of becomes something else, or a different specific type of wine, because the wine industry is very specific on what everything is.